Yeah, let's get to that from the start. All right. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it right now. Josh Pate, get the fuck out of here. I'm just going to say the next one. Ryan Russillo from formerly of ESPN. Get the fuck out of here. All right. I am so tired of this slander, and I can't believe I'm defending a Big Ten team here. But the fact they're getting over there, and Kirby's smart with his ridiculous statements. Well, you could tell the committee to come down here and play. Wait, what? What does that even mean? What does that mean? You're going to have Barry Alvarez play at fullback for you? What the fuck are you talking about? Right?
Well, look at the schedule this week and see who they have coming down to play them.
Yeah. And look, I'm going to continue to throw just bullshit on their schedule. As far as like strength of schedule, I don't believe their metrics. They're done by ESPN. I do not believe that Tennessee plays that hard of a schedule when Kent State and UTEP and Chattanooga are on it. All right. Yeah. I do not believe your numbers. Anyone that quotes the strength of schedule is just stupid, in my opinion, because the strength of schedule is just some bullshit numbers. It's bullshit numbers to help make something look better. I refuse to believe. I would argue that it would be harder. What's Tennessee's hardest opponent is Georgia and Alabama, right? When they went 1-1 on those, right? Those are very hard games.
Yeah.
But for all of for those two hard games to then not look at the amount of shitty opponents they've played, and you can throw NC State in there, even though I know that NC State has been decent over the years, not this year. Sorry. And the same can be said for Indiana playing Michigan, right? But to me, there's certain Big 12 schedules where I would say, well, shit, they play a hard opponent almost every week. I think 11 of the 12 games. That doesn't happen in some of the SEC teams. So I just have had it. And Russillo calling out Indiana and using Texas as the comparison, like Texas was a playoff team last year. And yet he doesn't bring up the fact that Texas played 7 backup quarterbacks, never even had the lead in the playoffs. Oh, and Indiana beat the team that beat Texas in the playoffs a year ago, the Washington Huskies, who played for the national championship, who currently have 6 wins, which is what is Vanderbilt is projected to go as their 8-point dogs against LSU and dogs against Tennessee in the final game of the season, which would be Texas's best one on their fucking resume right now. Ridiculous shit is being spewed out.
Well, I'll throw Pate a bone today with Danny Kanell. He said if Texas loses to A&M, they should be out. So, that's a step in the right direction. I am kind of in agreement with you on Tennessee, although beating, who was it that they beat? Did they beat Georgia?
Alabama. They beat Alabama.
That's a great win. So it is. It's very hard to say what should be rewarded most, whether it be your overall strength of schedule or strength of record or your best win or your best loss or your worst loss. There's no like hard and fast like system that is in place that we can all point to and say, okay, this is by definition, better or worse than this. That's why it just becomes subjective every year. And then
Tennessee lost to Arkansas. You know what I mean? Like Ole Miss lost to Kentucky. If you don't think that Indiana beating Washington and beating, some of these other schools, Kentucky and UCLA are the same team, brother. You know what I mean? Like there's no difference in those teams. Yeah. So I understand that Indiana's schedule's light. That's why I bet the over. I understand Tennessee's schedule's light. That's why I bet them to make the playoffs. But to sit there and try to just say that Indiana doesn't deserve to be in is absolutely insane to me when you have so many SEC teams that qualify for this. Missouri played no one. A&M, there's a reason why I have a future on A&M to win the SEC because their schedule's dog shit, right? And same with Tennessee and same with Ole Miss. Those 4 teams specifically have played a very easy schedule in the college football season.
With all that said, I do think the SEC is the best conference in football this year. I will extend that.
I think if I had to bet, I would probably say it's the best conference. But I will say this: I think it is getting closer and closer with the NIL.
Do you really think they're better than the Big Ten? I mean, what do you at the top across the board? What
I just think across the board,
it's deeper than the Big Ten. The Big Ten drops off after the top 4 or so. Then there's a.
Who do you think Penn State beats in the in the SEC on a neutral site?
I mean,
Tennessee,
potentially
Yeah.
any of them.
yeah.
Do you
Tennessee
think
doesn't
they'd
have an
beat Ole
offense
Miss?
to me. That one's
beat Ole Miss.
maybe
Ole Miss just fucked them up like 2 years or a year ago in the
It's a
bowl.
question
bowl
who they
game.
would be-
No one
Yeah.
playing.
It's the question: who could they beat, or who would they be favored against? That's a big difference. Because I think everybody in the nation can drop a game to Penn State this year. It's not like that top tier teams. Which, if you're saying Penn State's on the second tier, it's not like that top tier teams is that much better than that second tier. Because that's why there's only 3 teams that are still undefeated, and 2 of them, Army's ranked all the way down at 19th. They're now behind a 3-loss South Carolina team.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. They had also had a very easy schedule.
Yeah, South Carolina's probably undefeated against that schedule.
I have no problem putting them behind 1-loss teams or even some 2-loss teams, but behind a 3-loss team?
Well, Penn State's ranked ahead of Indiana. Who has Penn State beat? Illinois is their best win.
Yeah.
Texas
they've looked pretty good in most of their games, though.
No, they haven't. No, they haven't.
Let me
Penn State barely beat Bowling Green. They needed a magical come from behind win to send it to overtime, and USC to miss a field goal.
That's true
right?
too. Maybe I'm just
that's
having
what I'm saying. I disagree. I don't think they're some juggernaut. And same with Texas. Texas, their best win is fucking Vanderbilt. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, looking at this positively, that's why this playoff is going to be fantastic, because no team is head and shoulders better than anybody else. I mean, Oregon right now is number 1; they're undefeated. But if you're telling me right now, Oregon plays Texas, neutral
anyone's
site?
game.
Yeah,
Oregon squeaked by Indiana or not Indiana, Ohio State, Boise,
Idaho,
and Wisconsin.
Idaho,
10 point against Wisconsin. I wouldn't say it's squeaking by, but it wasn't a convincing win. I guess week 1 maybe you forgive them a little bit, but still, you kind of got to hold them accountable for that.
That's another thing I want to talk about though, because I've seen so many people, and I'll throw Pate back into the mix here on this of that was the beginning of the year they lost. Well, then if we're gonna do that, where the loss means more now, then you should not be allowed to play fucking UTEP right now, right? Yeah, you should not be allowed to play Mercer. You should not be allowed to play these schools. Yeah. If you're telling me a loss now means way more than in September, then damn it, we should make a rule. You cannot schedule an FCS, or even I would even say a group of 5 that late, unless it's a historic rivalry or something. Which I don't think there's anything out there.
In the first half of the season.
Yeah, I don't want to see that lazy way of doing polls where this team lost, so you move them down, and someone jumps them just because they lost earlier, even if they still have the same amount of losses. You really have to look at who they beat, who they lost to, their whole complete resume. But guys, this is the way it's going to be moving forward. If the SEC can dominate the college football playoff rankings in a year where they're not dominant, because they're not dominant this year, even though I just said I still think they're the best conference in football. It's not like they're head and shoulders better than the other ones. But this is the future. I mean, yes, we wanted an expansion. Yes, we wanted a bigger playoff. Yes, I can't wait for the bigger playoff. But my fear all along was that the SEC and the Big Ten are gonna completely run shit. That's why you see the top Big 12 team, BYU, is ranked 14th. The top ACC team, Miami, is ranked 8th. That's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, no, and that's why they need to expand it more, because I would tend to push back and say, with the transfer portal, with players not wanting to be a backup, and the NIL, this is why you need to have more teams in then, because if they're going to have that jaded, the parity is there because of that. In my opinion, the parity is there because SMU raised $160 million.
The parity was always there more than it appeared. When
but back in the day, there was 12 teams paying, and majority of them were in the SEC, right?
Sure, I would agree that it's definitely increased recently.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But Patty's right though, because if we still had the 4-team playoff, then right now I think the 4-team playoff would be Notre Dame and either 2 SEC schools and 1 Big Ten, or 2 Big Ten and 1 SEC, or maybe not even Notre Dame. It wouldn't, ACC or Big 12 would not sniff the 4-team playoff right now.
Yeah, but but my point is just the fact that I think the reason why the ACC, like you said it and to me, Alabama. To me, if Alabama's playing, or if Oregon's playing Texas, or if Alabama's playing SMU, if Colorado's playing, or BYU is playing Penn State, I think every game's a game. I don't think it's a fucking blowout. You know what I mean?
And
like,
to our rights point, I mean, right now BYU is behind SMU, where BYU won straight up at SMU. So why is BYU 14th and SMU 13th? I get it. Yeah. That was when SMU wasn't starting Kevin Jennings. I think SMU is a better version right now, but still, I mean, they played
still in their house. If you play in Provo, you probably lose by double digits.
I don't know about that. I don't think so. But they played and BYU won. So therefore BYU should be above SMU.
I agree with that entirely. The other thing, I mean, that I kind of want to go back historically and look to see how they've done it. Not that it's right. I think a head-to-head should supersede, even if you have a loss against typically a mediocre team. But usually those losses, like in the case of Notre Dame in '93, they lost to like a 7-4, whatever it was, Boston College team. And they put Florida State over Notre Dame, despite Notre Dame's head-to-head win, because Notre Dame had lost to like a mediocre-ish or even just a good, whereas Florida State's loss was a great loss. So I don't know that has typically been rewarded, and that the team with the head-to-head loss should be put, or has traditionally been put below, but I do think they always should, pretty much. But going back to SMU, dude, they are just like Miami, the number 6 scoring offense in the nation. They are kind of like a mirror image, and they lost one game by 3 points, and they are completely not even in the discussion unless they win the ACC. Whereas Miami whooped Florida, and Florida has been competitive with a lot of SEC teams. So to think that SMU wouldn't be competitive with the SEC is just stupid, I think.
Yeah. Rob Donaldson with a great point here. Iowa State gets completely moved from the rankings for losses to 6-4 Texas Tech and 4-6 Kansas, but Ole Miss is in the top 10 for losing to 6-4 LSU and 4-6 Kentucky. Great fucking points. And I will hit on that too. Another thing is like these SEC, voices,
great.
These SEC voices are bitching. They're bitching because they fear that, hey, they're going to have this crazy tiebreaker scenario, right? Regardless of how many teams it fits in the tiebreaker realm. And a good team is going to get left out of the playoffs, which I understand. But once again, a 16-team conference with 8 conference games is good. This is only going to continue to do that. It's a dumb fucking setup from the start. It doesn't make sense.
Out. Meanwhile, the ACC or Big 12, their second best team misses out. So I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
There will be good teams left out of this thing, and traditionally the elite top like 3 or 4 teams have always like been a little bit ahead of the other teams, maybe 5 or 6. And that's kind of why we wanted expansion. But the fact that like you would get a group of 5 team that would go undefeated and be nowhere near the playoff is why we needed to expand it as up to 12. But when you're at 12 and everyone from like 7 to like 15 has typically been pretty comparable. So you're going to have this. Some good teams are going to get left.
This year, I think it's like, I mean, I guess you could say Oregon's undefeated, but I think you could do like 2 to 15, 1 to 15, really. Like, I don't.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's why the playoff is going to be great. I just wish it was a little bit more spread out throughout the whole country rather than dominated by 2 conferences.
Well, that's why you got to expand. 12 is never going to be enough. This needs to be 32 teams. Like I've said for a long fucking time. I'm serious.
But also it's just like expansion in college basketball. It's not like they're going to expand to allow the smaller conference teams. It's going to be if they're expanding, well, the Big Ten, the SEC wants their piece of that expansion money also.
You know how you solve this? Even though the odds are stacked against you, you gotta fight the odds. You gotta win on the field. When you have the opportunity to play in the playoff, you have to take advantage. They have to win these playoff games.
I'm curious to see how it works with the home field advantages because for so long the South has had the advantage against the North because you never play any fucking games in cold weather. I've heard so many players talk about this when they go to the NFL and that they got to play a game in Buffalo or Green Bay or Seattle or whatever. that it's just different. They're like, damn, we didn't have this in college because we never played. Even our bowl games would be in fucking Arizona or Miami or something.
Well, the NFL is a northern game. The northern teams have, and granted, the league didn't expand southward for a long time, but the North has traditionally always dominated the NFL.
But also, seeds 5 through 8 are going to be mostly SEC, Big Ten, and Notre Dame.
Well, so, I'm curious if they purposely try to limit how many, like, if it's right in neck and neck between Penn State and Ole Miss, are they going to choose Mississippi just because of the weather?
I saw a forecast today that had basically one SEC team in that 5 through 8 range and like 3 SEC teams going on the road, and that, like, Notre Dame, if they're one loss, will probably host. Penn State, if they're one loss, will probably host. Indiana, or even a 10-2 Ohio State, if they lose, might get the 8 seed. So yeah, we're gonna see the SEC put to the test a little bit. And this weekend, I think we have some snow first showing up on the forecast in some of these games. So
there we go.
It's the season.